people in grief are very vulnerable, and you can do a lot of harm by going to somebody that really is trying to take advantage of you. So I visited the University of Arizona that has certain protocol, and discussed it with several other scientists, and we developed our own process that we had been running where we require mediums that wish to take part to do 4 15-minute readings for sitters that we pre-select, and we're careful to make sure that the sitters have no knowledge of the mediums and vice versa. And sitters are pre-briefed on specific scoring procedures. That means they're going to evaluate the evidence to see whether it's a hit or a miss or a maybe or it's significant. And we compile composite scores, and only those mediums that meet the minimum standard are granted this certification. And we can attest to the fact that there was no fraud, there was no deception, there were controlled conditions, and at least on that given day, this medium showed proficiency in bringing through spirit communication.
I feel like the foundation is a fantastic opportunity to really weed out who really can do this and who really can't. And I think it's important when you're helping others that you have the background, and it made me feel good to have this, certified behind me. It just documented, like, yes, this is real. This is good. I am helping others.
Well, unfortunately, some while ago, my wife and I lost our son Gabriel. He was just a week short of his 22nd birthday. He was killed in a car accident. And we knew right off that there were reasons to believe that he still existed. It wasn't something that was completely out of my set of beliefs. I knew it was possible, but I didn't know if I could really incorporate that meaningfully in dealing with the tragedy. And over time realized that it really is very likely the case that Gabriel's still around.
I go to church every Sunday. However, when I went to meetings at church, and I'm always a little leery about saying something to people because I know that a lot of people do not believe in hearing from the other side. And when I told one person at church, they said, "Oh," and she said her husband had heard from his first wife, who had passed away, and other friends said the same thing. They said, "Oh, well, I've heard from so-and-so, and I've heard from so-and-so." And so it was very interesting. But if you bring the subject up, you find that there are a lot of people that are getting help from the mediums.
The day of the funeral for my daughter, one of my daughter's friends came over the house, and she said, "I have to tell you something." And I said, "What?" And she said, when Bailey, my daughter, was 13, she was 15 when she passed, she said they were having a sleepover, and my daughter made her friend make a pact with her. And the pact was that if either one of them were to die, they would make up a sign so that the other one would know that they still exist. And in this case, Bailey said to her friend, "I'm going to leave a blue magic marker someplace where you wouldn't expect it." And after the funeral, Bailey's friend went back to her home, and she walked into her room, and she saw neatly placed on her computer keyboard a blue magic marker. Now, she said the reason that was so significant is A, she didn't know that she owned one, and B, she wasn't using it. So there were other people in the house, her parents. So she went into her parents, and said, was anybody in my room? And they said no. So, will anybody leave a magic marker there? And I said no. So those kind of occurrences are sort of hard to explain.
If we look at the physical world, it is something that we know that's a table, we know that's a ceiling, but when the spirit is around us, we can't see it, but it's a matter of feeling it. So it's not apparent to the eye that our loved ones are with us. But we have many other things in our lives that are not apparent to the eye, but we know they exist. Oxygen, dog whistles, we can hear, dogs can hear that vibration, but we can't. Radio waves are between us right now, but we don't know that they're there until we put up an antenna. So the neat thing about making it scientific is that it does bring it to some physicality. And that's why I think the foundation's very important.
The sign registry, I had the idea that we have to find some way of acknowledging these signs and recognizing them that they really are signs, if in fact it's true. And so we came up with the idea that we have this site where you can log on and you can register a sign, some sort of sign that you would like to communicate to your loved one after you pass. And this is kept a secret. So you designate who you're going to leave the sign for and what the sign is. We become the storehouse of this data. And when you pass on, if your loved one has experienced something, some anomalous thing that they can't explain, like I was just talking about before, they could log on to the site using their password, and we can verify whether what they experienced was in fact the very sign that was left for them. So when you think about that, what does that do? I mean, what greater gift could there be? Because now you've just witnessed that your loved one left this thing for you. There's no other explanation for it. And we encourage people to leave very specific things, not things that are general in nature. So that's another project, that we're working on, or that it's right now it's in full force. So we also expect to be able to develop a lot of data from that, because although it's not done under strict scientific conditions, it certainly would be significant when a lot of people start verifying these signs.
There was a psychologist in Israel, and he was asked if he believed in life after life. And he said, well, truly, I don't think we really know anything about what happens after we die. And since we don't have anything that we really know, all we can do is say there are two possibilities. Either that there's life after death, or that there's no life after death. It's a 50-50 shot either way. And he said, as to those chances, as a survivor of the Holocaust, where the chances of my living were well under 50%. I'll take the chances that there are life after life.
I would just say that, I think that we tend to think of things today, if it can't be perceived by our five senses, we tend to think of it as paranormal. And I think by also paranormal, we put them in the category of mystical. And one of the things that we try to do is to show that these paranormal things are actually normal. There are many more senses that we're not aware of, just that there very well may be many dimensions we're not aware of. And we try to demystify these things.
The most you can say is you don't know. And if you take that as at face value, then there's a 50% chance that we do exist and a 50% chance that we don't. Unless, of course, you want to try to shift those odds by some belief system, which is your right, but it's certainly not a factually grounded way of doing it. So right off the bat, the best you can say is, I don't know. To say there isn't is illogical. Now, if you want to go beyond that, then I would just ask you to think for yourself. Are all things meaningful, or are all things meaningless? I don't think you can have it halfway. You can't have a meaningful existence in a meaningless world, and you can't have a meaningless existence in a meaningful world. So if you can find one thing in your life that's meaningful, one thing that would say transcends pure materialism, if you can just find that one spoke that goes right down to the hub, and that is that there is a divine element in all of us, then you can go out from that hub to anything and anywhere. So if you can, instead of looking at that big picture and trying to understand the abstract questions, just ask yourself, is there ever a time when your love for someone made you recognize how wonderful the fact is that they exist? Have you ever seen someone die? I have. And you realize what an enormous loss it is? It is not just a rearrangement of molecules. There's something that transcends anything that has to do with the physical being. And when I saw my son die, I knew this isn't atoms that are passing. That's his body that remains. It's his soul that's passing.